Hello, my name is Clare Moody, your Labour MEP for the southwest of England. I'm sorry I can't be with you this morning, but I know how valuable these Brexit summits are to the people of Plymouth, and I hope you yourselves are finding it helpful this morning. I thought it would be useful just to give you an update of where I think we are on the negotiations in terms of the future that matters so much to the city of Plymouth and more widely to the southwest. Not many people understand the complexity of our region and indeed specifically of your city. For example, we're not often thought of as manufacturing centre, which is really important because actually in the context of the Brexit negotiations, manufacturing is one of the areas that is going to be directly impacted in a way that worries me deeply. So we have manufacturing, we have those links through supply chains that happen across the manufacturing sector. There are so many other areas. Fishing is a very obvious one to talk about. There are other points as well, where actually the relationships we have with the EU are much more complicated than the nature of the debate that we have had over Brexit over recent times has allowed us to explore properly. When it comes to how those negotiations are developing, then we again are facing all sorts of problems that aren't being explored thoroughly or properly enough in the wider conversation that's happening around Brexit in the UK a lot of the time. So, for example, one of the things that we are not seeing enough of is the point around the red lines that have been put down, and were put down very early by the British government, by Theresa May in her speech to conference in October 2016, by those speeches that she's made. And those red lines actually mean that we're just looking at a Canada-style agreement. When you look at the relationship we've had with the EU over these 45 years or so, then a free trade agreement that looks at us being like Canada is in danger of ripping out those structures that have been built up around our relationship. And it actually means those losses, those impacts on people are going to be so much worse than is actually being articulated by a lot of our politicians. That's why things that are being done in Plymouth are really, really important. For example, the legal challenge that Tudor has set down to the UK government to open up the honesty around what we are going to see with the impact studies that we've only skimmed the surface of publicly. Those are really important effects that we need to be focusing on in relation to the outcomes. So that's what's being done by the people of Plymouth. The limitations that those red lines that were set down by the UK government are the limitations that the EU 27 negotiators have focused on in terms of what's happening. And Brexit is seen very much in that context on this side of the channel. Barnier, the Commission, the Parliament's negotiators have looked at this, looked at those red lines and gone, okay, within those parameters, this is where we can get to. The difficulty again that's happened since those red lines with the Chequers Agreement is that everyone here reads English, and they've seen that the Chequers Agreement was an agreement that got reached amongst the Cabinet 2 years after the referendum result and didn't survive 5 days after that agreement. So that's presented the EU 27 negotiators with problems as well. So we now have a really short period of time in which we need the UK government, over 2 years after the referendum result, to come up with negotiating position that reflects a realistic possibility. The one thing that is absolutely certain is this talk of a no deal being better than a bad deal is not a realistic proposition on either side of the channel. So I wish I could be with you in person to elaborate on these points much more deeply. I know Luke and others who are there with you will be talking about these points more specifically. But on this side of the channel, it is a worrying time for maintaining the closeness of the relationship that we have had with the European Union historically. And that's why, as I say, the activities that you are doing are vital in bringing home the importance of our continuing close relationship with the EU and how we build from those red lines actually to a realistic proposal that can deliver that ongoing relationship. Have a great summit, and I look forward to hearing the outcomes of that. Thank you.